Hi everybody, we're going to talk about Chapter 10 today, which is Social Emotional Development in Early Childhood. So we're going to start with our fact or fiction. The first one is most young children underestimate their own abilities, and this is not true. They actually overestimate their abilities. Number 2, permissive parenting is always the most destructive parenting style, and this also is not true. Number 3, physical aggression increases as children mature, while verbal aggression declines. This also is not true. And number 4, the idea that some gender differences are biologically based is becoming less well accepted with each passing year. And this is actually true. In addition to intrinsic motivation, people can always be driven by extrinsic motivation. That is, needing to have their achievements rewarded from outside, like gold stars given at school or verbal praise given for accomplishments. In one study, children were supplied with drawing materials. The children either expected no reward, a specific reward they were told to expect, or an unexpected reward. Afterwards, researchers found that when it came to drawing on their own, the group that expected a reward was less likely to draw than the group that was unexpectedly rewarded. With further studies, researchers wanted to understand whether, when, and how positive reinforcement should be given. They tended to agree that praising or paying a person after an accomplishment sometimes encourages that behavior. However, if payment is promised in advance, that extrinsic reinforcement may backfire. So what this slide is going through right now is kind of when kids are more intrinsically versus extrinsically motivated. Maturity affects emotional regulation. A 2-year-old might throw a temper tantrum, but 5-year-olds usually have more self-control. They might pout or curse but not hit and scream. Also, a 2-year-old may show extreme fear and distress over things like a stranger wearing a hat or a drain in a bathtub, but 5-year-olds would have greater self-control. Externalizing and internalizing children have trouble regulating the expression of emotions. They either have too little self-control or they control themselves too much. Girls usually develop emotional regulation ahead of boys, especially when comparing externalizing emotions. In adolescence, girls are more often depressed, and this may be the result of too much internalizing. In both boys and girls, research suggests that extreme externalization or internalization predicts future psychopathology. So externalizing behaviors would be like lashing out and expressing powerful feelings. Internalizing behaviors would be turning emotions into distress inward. They're like feeling excessive shame and guilt and worthlessness. And psychopathology is an illness or disorder of the mind. Aggression grows out of antipathy, feeling of dislike or even hatred for another person. When children act on these feelings, they display antisocial behavior, deliberately hurtful or destructive feelings or behavior to another person. On the other hand, when children show feelings and actions that are helpful and kind, of not an obvious benefit to themselves, they display prosocial behavior. So how do children show aggression? So there's instrumental aggression, reactive aggression, relational aggression, and bullying aggression. And basically, instrumental aggression is hurtful behavior that's basically gaining something, like they'd hit another child to get the toy. Reactive would be retaliation, like if a child hits you, hitting them back. Relational would be non-physical acts, such as like insults or social rejection. And bullying, we're all kind of more familiar with that one, is unprovoked, repeated physical or verbal attacks on victims. So there's parenting style. These styles were identified by Diana Baumrind around 50 years ago. Her study included 100 preschool children in California, all of whom were middle-class European Americans. Multicultural international research has found that specific discipline methods and family rules are less important than parental warmth, support, and concern. So these are 4 specific parenting styles. There's authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and neglectful, uninvolved. So authoritarian is they have high behavior standards, very strict punishment, little communication. Authoritative is sets limits but listens and can be flexible. Permissive is high nurturance and communication, but there's like very little discipline at all. And neglectful, uninvolved is indifference, unaware of what happens in a child's life. And the one that we've found to be the most beneficial parenting is the authoritative. While viewing these results, keep in mind that language development depends on conversations that is individualized to each child, and emotional regulation depends on parental guidance. 6 major organizations recommend that parents limit their children's television watching, with no electronic media at all allowed for children under age 2. So what happens when the television's on? There's no interaction versus active play. So you can see that watching TV is such an inactive experience for children, while when the TV is off, there is much more active play. An argument might include cultural learning, perhaps mostly via observations, plus reinforcement by parents and teachers of gender-appropriate behavior. A counter-argument might include that gender differences involving play emerge at a young age before children have a chance to be influenced by learning. Those differences may well be at least partly biological in nature. So when we're talking about gender differences, people do feel like, are there really gender differences in children and how they play? And I already said that many people do feel that there are. And these are just showing some different pictures. So sex differences are biological differences between males and females in organs, hormones, and body types, while gender differences are differences in the roles and behavior of males and females that are prescribed by the culture. So girls tend to play in small groups with 1 or 2 friends, while boys tend to play in large, less intimate groups. What is it that makes boys and girls different? Answers from developmentalists about questions related to gender vary. This is also true of mothers and fathers and people from different cultures. So what would you identify as the important milestones and lessons young children learn about their feelings and relationships with people in their lives? Does their gender have an impact on their destiny? So children learn social play, they clarify gender roles, they learn emotion regulation. These are all things that they learn from people in their environment. What I'd like you to do now is, this is the end of chapter 10. Please go to the forum area and respond to questions about discipline and children.